here's the thing that is, I don't want to say what is interesting. He kind of stopped throwing deep in 2022, the year he won league MVP and set the all-time single-season yardage record, because it was so much run-after-catch stuff. That's when, you know what I mean? It was a ton of that, but when he did throw deep, he was effective. So I feel last year, 2023, it seems like gets chalked up to the drops. You know what I mean? And then nobody cared anyway because they won the Super Bowl. Last year, to me, was the perfect storm of sucking in the deep passing game. It started with Mahomes started the year with some of the worst football he's played as a pro. Remember, we talked about it. It was like in the first 4 games of the year, each game, he had a pick that was like, what was that? Yeah. You know what I mean? It wasn't unlucky. It wasn't off somebody's hands.
It was scratchers.
Right. It was. They won the games anyway, but it was weird. So that happens. In the midst of that, you have all of the wide receiver injuries, most notably Rashee Rice in that 4th game. Then you have the true disintegration of your tackle position, which gives you no time to throw deep. Left tackle got hurt, and Jawan Taylor had a terrible year. Yep. And then on top of all that, you're chasing this history. The defense is playing great. You've been so good late in games that's like, you know what? We ain't got it. We don't have the horses for it. The only real threat we have downfield's a rookie, and at the time, he can't get his feet in bounds. We're going to play the most boring, conservative style of offense there is. Lean on the defense, then I'll take care of it at the end. All of that came together, which created a boring, ineffective, deep passing game. I think almost none of that is the case right now. You know what I mean? I think that right now, obviously, the receivers are healthy. I think Mahomes, as opposed to coming off back-to-back Super Bowl MVPs and maybe a more, relaxed offseason, is coming off hearing you make fun of him for throwing touchdowns in the Super Bowl, which seems rude, but whatever, you're a Mahomes guy. They don't have the specter of the three-peat weighing on them, and, all of that, and I think a greatly improved tackle spot on both sides of the offensive line, left and right. So I think it should be back, but I also think that's why it went away.
Look, if he's mediocre as he's been like these last 2 years roughly, and they keep winning, they win 14 or more games, I'm going to long for the days when he was throwing 40-something touchdowns a year. But it'll be like, hey, they're winning. He's the best. It is what it is. But if they're 11-ish wins and he's not, he's the guy he's been the last 2 years, then I actually think there's reason for concern. These last 2 years, I haven't been concerned at all, even as he hasn't played up to his usual standard. Like you said, 2 years ago, it was the drops. Last year, it was the injuries. But this year, this is where he's ranked over the last 2 years, obviously very not good for Patrick Mahomes. But you got Xavier Worthy, who you mentioned the deep ball game kind of went away in 2022. That's after Tyreek left. Yeah. So now you do have another guy who is, is a burner like that. And you got Hollywood Brown, who will be healthy. Rashee, when he gets back, I think is huge. And you've got 2 years of I haven't played close to my standard for motivation. So if he doesn't come out and light it up and they're not winning 15 games, then I think there's real reason for wow.
Okay. Everyone's wrong here. And I don't say that loosely. The deep ball passing issues are not just because of the drop passes. When you do the deep ball passing of 20-plus yards, which is what they talked about, his adjusted completion percentage, so this factors in the drops. He was already ranked 29th at 36.5%. That's the adjusted completion percentage. Brock Purdy was 68.1%. CJ Stroud, 57.9%. Jared Goff, 54.3%. Stafford, 55.6%. So it's not just the drops. This has this percentage right here that I'm reading, the adjusted completion percentage, has nothing to do with those drops. So that's not the story here. It's really not. In 23, you also can't blame the O-line because on deep ball passing when he was pressured and was throwing the ball, 20 plus yards. This is the top 10 quarterbacks who dealt with pressure from 24 to 32. And Patrick Mahomes has the lowest percentage out of all of them except for Sam Howell. And I'm sorry, I don't consider Sam Howell. Okay? But Jalen Hurts was dealing with a ton of pressure, 28. Jordan Love, a ton of pressure, and still better. So those things do matter. Even just in the deep ball passing alone, Patrick Mahomes had 5 drops. Jalen Hurts had 4 drops. Sam Howell had 4 drops. Trevor Lawrence had 4 drops. Justin Fields had 5. So Josh Allen had 3. So just because Patrick Mahomes had either 1 or a couple more drops in deep ball passing, that doesn't explain. You could say that they then, had less attempts or shied away from it or whatever. That's fine. That's, kind of fair, but not 100% the story either. Mahomes was top 9 in attempts. 63 attempts. Tua was 63 attempts. Hurts was 64. Josh Allen, 76. This is all within range. So that's just not entirely accurate. But I actually covered this before when it was on, on another clip when they were talking about this. And I defended Patrick Mahomes with the deep ball passing, because they were pretty much saying hey, when we control for the drops and the pressure, Patrick Mahomes has just not been accurate in the deep ball. That has to change. What's going on? Blah, 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 blah. And I think really the best take is that it only matters so much, honestly. Because when you have a high functioning offense, and especially a play caller and, coach like Andy Reid, you're not going to have to hold on for dear life with some of these deep balls to impact a game. You can impact the game in so many different ways. And as Nick Wright himself mentioned yak and how many of the yards came from that, he said it, not me. He said it. So you don't come at me now. That's the style of offense that you're running. That's the style. And what Andy Reid has been able to master and do at such a high level, which is what I pointed out, in previous videos about Patrick Mahomes benefiting from this, the behind the line of scrimmage passes, the screen passes and whatnot. But what made it so much extra special with Patrick Mahomes was also contributing the off the script passes as well as some pretty electric deep passes. But I mean, make no mistake about it. Like Nick or Bruce said, I will long for the days where Mahomes throws for 40-some touchdowns or whatever. And it's he won his first Super Bowl throwing half the amount of touchdowns that he did in 2018. So even when they won their first Super Bowl, it wasn't based on a year where he was throwing 50 touchdowns, 5,000 yards. So you have to keep that in context. He threw for 5,000 yards, 50 touchdowns in 2018. They did not win the Super Bowl. The following year, they win the Super Bowl. He throws 1,000 yards less and half the amount of touchdowns. Wins the Super Bowl. That matters. Doesn't win in 2020. Doesn't win in 21. Wins in 2022. But as Nick said, a ton of yak. But then he wins another Super Bowl throwing 27. And only 4,000 yards. So, to me, if I'm looking at this through Patrick Mahomes' lens, it's kind of interesting. In a way, I'm just and Tom Brady actually kind of said this. I think it was against the 49ers when they were playing each other, the Chiefs versus 49ers, where he was just Patrick Mahomes at this point, it really doesn't matter what the stats show. It's just all about winning. And kind of just, who cares about what the other people have to say about it? If it's Andy, if it's a team, if it's a defense, it's just execute the offense at the highest level and just find ways to win. It's not about the highlights, not about the deep ball passing. It's not about this. Aaron Rodgers had all of that and more. and Tom Brady didn't necessarily, but Tom Brady kept winning, and then it just was like, all right, he's got enough of the seasons where he is lighting up the box score, and combine that with plenty of wins. It's like, all right, just the way it goes. Let other people kind of have some of these high level stats. But that's where what Bruce said, where it's like if they're not winning, then you would be concerned. But at the same time, if they're not winning and Patrick Mahomes is now still putting up these numbers like the most recent year, can we still point to, well, there's injuries, or well, he doesn't have weapons, or well, let's like, can we point that? Because if Patrick Mahomes had a worse defense, if he had the 49ers defense, they don't make it to the Super Bowl. I firmly believe that should not be controversial in any kind of way. But at the same time, I wouldn't point to Patrick Mahomes and say they didn't make the Super Bowl, they failed the three-peat because he wasn't good enough. I would simply say that the team wasn't good enough. So it's just, you always kind of have to figure out what conversation are we having right now. And that's why I always emphasize it's always different depending on the lens you're looking at it through. And this is where Patrick Mahomes is in a more unique situation, because we're constantly evaluating him as, are you the greatest quarterback to ever live? Are you on the path to becoming the greatest quarterback to ever live? Are you the best quarterback just in the NFL right now? And when you're looking at things constantly through that lens, well, then you have to zoom in. You have to really, really magnify. You have to really go through a fine-tooth comb and say, okay, you're winning these games. Is it because of you? Okay, your stats are down, but why this, that? Like, that's just what happens. That's why you're doing this with the Patrick Mahomes and you're not doing this with Lamar Jackson. I mean, in 23, even in that one year that I showed you, Lamar Jackson had an even worse adjusted completion percentage. He was at 36.7, and he was right there with Patrick Mahomes. 36.5 to 36.7. He had 5 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. Patrick Mahomes had 1 touchdown, 6 interceptions. Not the best, obviously. So that's, Lamar Jackson saves himself with those touches, with those touchdowns. But they both threw roughly around the same amount of yards, 681 to 624, which ends up being a toss-up at that point, honestly. Yeah. And Lamar Jackson still had 3 drops, and Patrick Mahomes had 2. The difference of 2 drops is not, that doesn't explain all of that, obviously. So it hasn't been Patrick Mahomes' strong suit as of late, but in a lot of ways, it's fine. In 2022, Patrick Mahomes only had 3 touchdowns that were deep ball. Only 3 in 22. Okay? That's it. Geno Smith had 14. Geno Smith was 99.3 in this rating here. Okay? So, pretty good. Did Geno Smith lead the Seattle Seahawks to the Super Bowl? He did not. Did Patrick Mahomes? He did. Josh Allen had 11 deep ball touchdowns. Joe Burrow had 8 deep ball touchdowns. So significantly more than Patrick Mahomes. But yeah, at the end of the day, total, more passing yards. I mean, Josh Allen had 1,170, passing yards that came from deep ball passing, whereas Patrick Mahomes 912. And yet Patrick Mahomes clearly finished with a lot more overall passing yards. And the big reason behind that is because he had 703 behind the line of scrimmage passes and 9 touchdowns, which is by far the largest. 9 touchdowns from behind the line of scrimmage. The next closest was Joe Burrow with 4. Tom Brady, 4. Russell Wilson, 3. Aaron Rodgers, 3. So that's why some of those things don't matter. He had 565 yards on screen passes, which was the most in the NFL, and another 5 touchdowns, which was tied with Aaron Rodgers. So it's just like, at that point again, it's just, how are you running the offense? We can zero in on the deep ball, and it is interesting, and it is something that you could use, that when you're really zooming in to being like, is he the best quarterback, or is this quarterback having a better year, or, you know, whatever, or, you know, GOAT between him and Tom Brady, whatever it may be. Yeah, that's when those things matter. But in terms of running the offense as Andy Reid wants to, I mean, it doesn't. It doesn't. It would matter more for Sean McVay's offense. It would matter more for Kevin O'Connell's offense. I'm taking Andy Reid over those two coaches any day. I mean, like, I don't even have to hesitate for even a second. So, yeah. I mean, in 22, again, Patrick Mahomes led the NFL in yak with 2,853. The next closest was Herbert with 2,493. Tom Brady, 2,315. You know, 500 difference here. Jared Goff, 600 yards difference, and they each played 17 games. Like, that's significant. If you weren't getting that yak and you weren't able to really move the chains and you know, get these first downs, and now you're putting the pressure on Patrick Mahomes to push the ball down the field, and then he was fundamentally failing to do so, then that could be the conversation. But I don't foresee that ever happening as long as Andy Reid's the coach. And so it just, you know, you take advantage and you take the gifts that your coach can bring you. That's the whole benefit of having a great coach. If you don't allow a great coach to, you know, help enhance what you do and benefit you overall, not only individually, but then also from a team perspective, it's like, well, then there's no point. Like, it's just, it doesn't make any sense. The problem is that Mahomes fans take that as for some reason like hate or something, saying that a coach like Andy Reid or that someone like a Patrick Mahomes benefits from an Andy Reid, but like that's it's not hate. It's the benefit. And it's why something like in 23-24, you could be one of, you know, again, statistically one of the worst deep ball passers, and you can try to say that it's because of, you know, drop this or drop that, and it's just not the case. And just understand that it's not a crucial part of their offense. And if it was a crucial part of their offense, that would be a different conversation to be had. And, you know, fortunately for the Chiefs and fortunately for Mahomes, it's not the conversation that you have to have. And the only reason why you're even remotely having the conversation is because Patrick Mahomes is constantly being considered and evaluated as the best quarterback of all time, as well as the best quarterback in the NFL. That's why people aren't saying like, hey, let's look at Lamar Jackson's adjusted completion percentage on deep ball pass. And it's just like, let's look at Josh Allen's. Let's look Dak Prescott. Look how high he is. Does that mean he's the best quarterback? And it's like, no. No, it does not. But those are just my thoughts. I'd absolutely love to hear yours. What do you guys all think about Patrick Mahomes, you know, and his deep ball passing? I mean, it's funny because his direct quote is, got to be better at throwing down the field. That's what he said. I don't want to see a single Kansas City Chiefs fan comment saying that I was being a hater in this video or this or that. Like, watch the whole video, man. Didn't say a single negative thing about Patrick Mahomes. I defended him in this very video. So save your tears for another video. But curious what you guys all have to say. Let me know in the comments below. I read every single comment, so whether you agree with me or disagree with me, either way, let's get in some discussions, let's get in some fights, but ultimately, let's just have some fun. And please do consider subscribing. We are building an amazing community here, and I absolutely love to see you part of it. I want to build something that we all generally feel connected to, something that we're really excited to be part of. I think we're all on our way to doing it. And please don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, as it really does help with visibility and the algorithm. Thank you so much. See you next time.